Is the tripod dead? With the advent of AI denoising, is the tripod irrelevant in modern digital photography? Today, we're going to find out. So join me on the banks of the Tyne in Newcastle on a chilly, chilly winter's morning as we test out whether AI noise reduction can beat a tripod. Let's get into it. So you join me on the banks of the Tyne. It's freezing cold and it's dark. Sunrise is in about an hour's time, and I've already started taking some images. And the idea is, what we're going to do, we're going to shoot the camera from the tripod at ISO 100, f4, maximum aperture of this particular lens, at whatever shutter speed is relevant. Then we're going to take the camera off, we're going to switch back on the image stabilization, and we're going to reshoot using auto ISO, same aperture, f4, and see what shutter speed we can get. We'll probably aim for about a 50th of a second, and then maybe up it a little bit to 100th, 125th of a second, just to make sure we can get the maximum quality out of the image without any camera shake. At the moment, it's so dark, we're getting an ISO of 1600 at 50th of a second, and even that's maybe not enough. So I'm waiting a little bit for the light to come up. Now, of course, tripods are used in low light. We use them to get a stable camera so we can maintain a decent image quality by reducing the shutter speed. But with modern cameras and modern AI denoising, we can now handhold our cameras at ridiculously high ISOs and still get shots. But how does it compare? We're going to crack on and take these shots, and then we'll take them back to the studio. But of course, it's not that simple. It's a very nuanced sort of situation. Yes, you probably can get high ISO images that look really, really good. And I've done videos about this. I'll leave a link in the description below. But the simple fact is that there are many, many situations where you do need a tripod. For example, if you want ethereal water, you want the water to look sort of foggy and misty. If you're doing astrophotography. And beyond that, there's the consideration that a tripod slows you down. It gives you a more considered approach to your photography. You actually think more because you're having to move more slowly, adjust the position of the camera very carefully. Tripods, they're very best, are not the easiest things to move around, or rather tripod heads, ball heads. So you do have to be very, very careful. On the flip side, handheld allows you to get into positions that you can't get into with a tripod. It allows you to move faster. It allows you to get more spontaneous looking images. You can quickly flip the camera into a different position if something happens in front of you. All things that you can't do with a tripod. So the argument is very, very nuanced, and you can't actually say, yes, a tripod is irrelevant in the modern world. It absolutely depends on what you want to do. If you want to do really high quality shots like I'm trying to take this morning, the sun's just beginning to put a little bit of blue glow in the sky over there at the moment, then yes, a tripod will give you the absolute quality. But if you want to just get that shot, then it's quite possible that high ISO and AI noise reduction will actually work just as well. So I'm going to crack on and get a few more shots just as the sun's coming up and the ISO can start rising up to something a little more respectable. I'm actually aiming for around 12,800 as my base ISO for these shots. And if I can achieve that, we can take these back to the studio and take a comparison look at the low ISO on the tripod versus the high ISO in camera handheld. So this shot is going to be on the tripod, and we are getting an exposure of 8 seconds at f4 ISO 100. So let's take that shot. Actually looks a really nice shot. We've got that little bit of blue in the sky now. That blue hour has started, and we'll see what we can get. We'll make sure that the image stabilization is switched off, and let's go. And that's done. We'll just quickly check that. And now we're going to take the camera off the tripod, and we're going to put it on auto ISO. We'll see what ISO we get. and we'll raise the shutter speed up to around 50th and then see if we can get it up to 125th as well, just to see if we can hand hold it. So let's put it on auto ISO, and we'll bring the shutter speed up to a 50th of a second, and we're still getting 1600 ISO, but we'll take the shot anyway. We'll have a quick look to see if that's sharp. And yeah, it looks pretty sharp. It looks pretty sharp in the camera. Obviously, we can't tell until we get home. You can actually see the noise in the viewfinder. That's a combination of a 9 million pixel viewfinder and the fact that it's 16,000 ISO. So there is a definite amount of noise in this. I'm going to wait a little bit longer for the sun just to come up a little bit below the horizon and put a little bit more light in the sky so we can get this down to 12,800, and we'll see what we can get from then. In the time being, I'm going to actually put it back on the tripod and just get some shots for myself. So the other thing that we need to factor into this argument as well is the image stabilization on modern cameras. It's got so good, I believe that this one now can reduce camera shake by up to 8 stops. Using the combined in-body stabilization of the camera plus the optical stabilization of the lens. Now for the handheld shots I'm doing that, and for the tripod shots I'm switching it off because image stabilization can sometimes play a little bit funny on tripods. So it's off when we're on the tripod and it's on when we're shooting handheld. So that's all the shots done. It's pretty cold here. It's getting time for a cup of coffee. So I'm going to head off, grab a coffee, go back to the studio, and then we'll have a look at these images in PhotoLab 9 from DxO, just to see how well we can get the handheld ones to look compared to the tripod ones using PhotoLab 9 and their AI noise reduction. We may also have a look in Lightroom and see how well Lightroom's noise reduction does as well, but we'll sort that out when we get back to the studio. So welcome back to the studio. It's a couple of days later. I've organized all the images and picked out the ones that I want to work on. And we're going to look at 2 images at 12,800 ISO and compare them to 100 ISO. And I also have one taken at 16,000 ISO. So that will be quite interesting to look at. The question we're asking in this video is, are tripods irrelevant? And of course the answer to that is no, they're not irrelevant. There are many, many cases where a tripod will still be needed. I think perhaps the more relevant question is, do we need tripods all the time? And I think we're going to find out in DxO PureRaw in a moment, but the answer to that is no. Now, if you've been following me, I'm on a bit of a journey with DxO products. I'm operating them alongside my Adobe Lightroom and Photoshop package and just seeing how easy it is to move away from the Adobe package. If you're interested in DxO products, I do have a discount code of 15%, and I will leave the links for those down in the description below. So for now, let's get into PureRaw and see what we can do with these high ISO images. And then we'll take them into PhotoLab 9 and just see how good the denoise has worked compared to the lower ISO image. Let's get into it. So as you can see, I have the images here in DxO PureRaw. And the first one we're going to work on is this one, which was taken at 12,800 ISO. And if I zoom in on it, you can see it's pretty noisy. What I do is I right click on it and we'll go to process file, and you can see here where it pops up with the various processing options that we have for this particular raw file, and that's correction and output. And if we click on correction, we'll use the Deep Prime XD2X version of Denoise, which is their best one for this particular type of file. We're going to keep the luminance and force details at default here. We're going to keep the lens sharpness optimization on. If you remember, DxO is an app that has very, very powerful lens optimization systems, and I've already downloaded the optimization file for my lens, the 24-105. We will correct vignetting, we'll correct aberration, and we will correct lens distortion. We will output it as a DNG file. That keeps it raw, obviously, and then we'll have a look at it in PhotoLab just to see how it comes out. So let's click on process now. These are pretty much all default settings. So let's click on process now, and there we go. We'll just hold that for the moment. On the left, you can see the original file, and on the right, you can see the newly processed raw file. In terms of image look, they're very similar. The DxO PureRaw doesn't do very much in the way of image manipulation. What it does do is reduce noise, sharpen up, and add lens corrections. And as I can see straight away, just at screen view level, that it's done a pretty good job at reducing the noise and maintaining sharpness. And you can see that's done a really, really good job, particularly in the shadow areas here of the bridge. If we bring it up to the top, in the sky here, it's done a very, very good job whilst maintaining sharpness. There is perhaps a tiny little bit of smudging in the image here, but overall it looks really, really good. So let's go back to the lightbox and we'll try one more at 12,800 ISO. In fact, what we'll do the equivalent one at 100. We'll process it so that it has the same processing as the 12,800 file, and then we'll look at it in PhotoLab. So we'll keep the corrections exactly the same and just wait for that to come up. And if we go to 100%, you can see there was a very, very slight amount of noise in the original that has been reduced slightly. But overall the image looks pretty much the same. There is a little bit of sharpening going on, I think. Yes, definitely. If you look at the railings here, DxO PureRaw has applied a little bit of extra sharpening to the image here. Let's have a look at this 1600 ISO image. And you'll see that the one that I'm comparing it to the left here, this is the one shot at 100 ISO, and the one at 16,000 ISO is very dark, and that's because I couldn't get the shutter speed down. So what we're going to do is process this in PureRaw, get rid of the noise, and then have a look at it in PhotoLab to see what we can do to get it to match the 100 ISO. So let's right click on that and process file. We'll keep the same corrections as before and press process now. And there we go. Now, if I have one criticism, it is actually quite slow, even on this M2 Pro Mac. I think Lightroom is slightly faster, but I don't think Lightroom is doing as much. It's merely denoising, whereas in this one, you're doing a number of other things, such as the lens optimization and clearing vignetting and chromatic aberration and lens distortion and stuff like that. I suspect if I switched those off over here, it would actually process faster. So let's go into 100% and have a look. And that's done a really, really nice job. As you can see, the noise in the sky area here has been very, very well cleaned up. The noise in the shadow has been taken out completely. Up here, that's done actually quite a remarkable job. If we go from that all the way to that, it's done a very, very good job. So let's close that out and let's kind of have a look at these images in PhotoLab 9. This is the one that was shot at 100 ISO. It's had a little bit of work done to it through DxO processing. It's now a DNG file, and if we zoom in, we can see that's it's a pretty clean image, but overall it's very, very sharp, and it's a good clean image. And this is the 12,800 ISO version. It looks very, very similar to the 100 ISO version, except of course this was handheld at 1/30th of a second f4 12,800 ISO. That's a very, very clean image. There is a little bit of noise in the sky, perhaps a little bit more than the 100 ISO version, but that actually looks really, really good. I would say there's probably more contrast in the 100 ISO, but that's to be expected. If we go back to the one at 12,800, a little bit less contrast, but that actually tends to keep these little highlights in better there as well. So that's a very, very impressive result. So now let's go to the 16,000 ISO image. And as you can see up here, it is 16K ISO, and it has actually brightened up for a little bit from the original when we've run it through the PureRaw process. And I'm going to just brighten it up a little bit more, just to make it look fairly similar to the original 1600 ISO. We'll bring the blacks down very slightly. We'll bring the highlights up very slightly, and that looks good. And if we zoom in, that's a very, very usable image, a very, very usable image. You can see a little bit of noise in the sky there, but the actual structure here looks sharp. There's plenty of contrast between the greens and the colors here. There's plenty of detail in the shadow areas. It's a very, very usable image. We'll compare that to the 100 ISO image. Obviously the 100 ISO is a little bit better, little bit cleaner, little bit sharper, but overall I think we're looking at a very, very good result. If you look at the detail in the signage here at 16,000 ISO and compare that to the details in the signage here at 100 ISO, it does look slightly sharper in 100 ISO, more defined, and I think you can see that there has been some sort of AI estimation here going on. But overall, I mean, it's a very, very usable image. A little bit sort of smeary in the background there. Hasn't done a great job there. That's where obviously the image is a little bit out of focus. Let's have a look at the 100 ISO. Yeah, you can see here there's a definite difference in the background there compared to the 16,000 ISO. But overall, that image at 16,000 ISO is actually very, very usable if you're not too concerned about what's going on in the background and in the lesser details. In the areas where the lens is actually focused seems to be where the AI is doing its very best work. And in the background, it does seem to be a little bit more smeary. But overall, very, very good result. So I think you can see that there is a very, very powerful argument for denoising these days, AI denoising. PureRaw has done an absolutely amazing job. Adobe Lightroom does an amazing job, and there are a number of other apps that also do really good denoising. From my experience, the PureRaw just pips it at the moment, and even that 16,000 ISO image got down to an acceptable level of noise to print a reasonable size image off of it. So the question to do you need a tripod? The answer is not all the time. You can get really good images in virtually no light by whacking the ISO up as high as you can, getting that shutter speed just high enough to eliminate camera shake. Some of these images were taken at 1/20th and 1/30th of a second, and the IBIS and optical stabilization in the Sony really, really helped out. It wasn't a fast lens, it's an f4 lens, so getting these sorts of results handheld from a fairly slow lens using optical image stabilization, in-body image stabilization, and then AI denoise is certainly a way forward. As I say, there will be times when we do need tripods, but if you do need to get the shot, you don't have to be afraid of noise anymore. So if you've been impressed with DxO PureRaw, I do have a 15% discount code for that and other DxO products in the description below. If you've enjoyed the video, a like would be fantastic, a subscription would be even better, and I'll see you in the next one.